Lady Ying Luo practiced her calligraphy with perfect precision, each stroke calculated and elegant, just like everything else about the eldest daughter of Lord Zhao Wei Ming, the king's most trusted advisor. "Your characters are beautiful, sister," came a voice from the doorway. Ying Luo didn't look up from her work. She knew that tone, sweet as honey but with thorns beneath. "Thank you, Yunxi," she replied calmly. "Though I notice you're not at your own morning lessons." Lady Zhao Yunxi stepped into the chamber, her silk robes rustling with each confident stride. Where Ying Luo was all careful grace, Yunxi burned bright like a flame, her eyes fierce, her smile quick and genuine. "The poetry master dismissed me early," Yunxi said with a shrug. "He said my verses were too passionate for proper court ladies. Perhaps if you focus more on technique and less on emotion," Ying Luo began. "Sister." A servant girl burst into the room, then immediately dropped to her knees. "Forgive the interruption, my ladies, but there's news from the throne room." Ying Luo set down her brush with deliberate care. "Speak, Funling." The servant girl's eyes sparkled with excitement. "The king has appointed a new general to his inner guard. They say he's young and handsome, and that his victory at the Battle of Iron Creek was legendary." Yunxi leaned forward eagerly. "What's his name?" "General Chen Wei Long, my lady," Funling whispered. "And he's unmarried." The sisters exchanged a quick glance. In the royal court, an unmarried general with the king's favor was more valuable than gold. Such a man could elevate a wife's family to unprecedented heights. "I suppose father will want to meet this general," Ying Luo mused, already calculating the possibilities. "Meet him?" Yunxi laughed. "I intend to do much more than that." Before Ying Luo could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed in the corridor. The sisters quickly composed themselves as their father, Lord Zhao Wei Ming, entered with his usual stern dignity. "My daughters," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "I trust you've heard about General Chen?" "Yes, father," both sisters replied in unison. Lord Zhao nodded approvingly. "The king has invited him to tonight's banquet in honor of his victory. Our family will attend, naturally." He paused, studying his daughters with shrewd eyes. "You will both conduct yourselves with perfect propriety." "Of course, father," Ying Luo said smoothly. Yunxi simply smiled, but Ying Luo caught the mischievous glint in her younger sister's eyes. After their father left, Yunxi turned to Ying Luo with excitement. "Tonight could change everything." "Indeed it could," Ying Luo agreed, though her tone was measured. "Which is precisely why we must be strategic." "Strategic?" Yunxi scoffed. "Love isn't about strategy, sister. It's about passion, about taking risks." Ying Luo finally looked up from her abandoned calligraphy. "And that, dear sister, is exactly why you'll lose." The challenge hung in the air between them like morning mist, delicate but unmistakable. The royal banquet hall blazed with 1,000 lanterns, their red and gold light reflecting off silk tapestries and polished jade. The air thrummed with conversation, laughter, and the gentle melody of court musicians. Ying Luo entered the hall like a swan gliding across still water. Her robes were the color of deep emeralds, chosen to complement her porcelain skin and dark hair, which was arranged in an elaborate style befitting her station. Every detail of her appearance had been carefully planned. "You look stunning tonight," complimented Lady Wang, one of the court's most influential gossips. "You're too kind," Ying Luo replied with a gracious smile, though her eyes scanned the crowd for her target. Across the hall, Yunxi made her own entrance, and heads turned. Her robes were crimson silk that seemed to flow like liquid fire, and she'd chosen a simpler hairstyle that framed her face beautifully. Where Ying Luo was calculated elegance, Yunxi was natural beauty. My, whispered an elderly lord to his companion. Lord Zhao's daughters are both lovely tonight, but so different. Yunxi heard the comment and smiled to herself. Different was exactly what she was counting on. Then the herald's voice boomed across the hall. His Majesty presents General Chen Wei Long, victor of Iron Creek. The crowd parted as a figure strode forward, and both sisters felt their breath catch. General Chen was indeed young, perhaps 28 years, with broad shoulders and an easy confidence in his bearing. His face was handsome but not soft, with intelligent dark eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. He's perfect, Yunxi breathed to herself. From across the hall, Ying Luo was thinking the same thing, though she kept her expression serene. This was a man worth having, not just for his looks, but for the power he represented. The king himself rose to greet the general. Chen Wei Long, tonight we celebrate your victory. Your Majesty honors me beyond my worth, the general replied, bowing deeply. His voice was rich and warm, carrying easily across the hushed hall. Nonsense, the king laughed. A man who can defeat 300 rebels with only 50 soldiers deserves all the honor we can bestow. Come, you must meet our most distinguished families. As the introductions began, both sisters prepared their own campaigns. Yunxi struck first. During the formal presentations, when General Chen was introduced to the Zhao family, she offered him a cup of wine with her own hands. General, she said, her voice like music, allow me to toast your incredible bravery. Their fingers brushed as he accepted the cup, and Yunxi made sure the touch lingered just a moment too long. You honor me, Lady Zhao, he replied, and she was pleased to see his eyes linger on her face. But Ying Luo was ready with her own strategy. As the evening progressed and guests mingled freely, she positioned herself near a group discussing military tactics, a subject she'd studied carefully after hearing of the general's arrival. The pincer movement General Chen used at Iron Creek was masterful, she commented to the group, raising her voice just enough to be overheard. It reminds me of the ancient tactics described in The Art of War. General Chen, who had been in conversation nearby, turned with interest. Lady Zhao speaks of military strategy? Ying Luo offered a modest smile. I find such subjects fascinating, General. A woman may not fight on battlefields, but she can certainly appreciate brilliant strategy when she sees it. Indeed, he agreed, moving closer. Few people truly understand the complexity of that particular maneuver. For the next quarter hour, they discussed military history with surprising depth. Yunxi watched from across the room, her jaw tightening with each passing moment. The evening continued with both sisters vying for the general's attention. Yunxi enchanted him during the traditional dances, moving with natural grace that made other ladies look stiff by comparison. But Ying Luo impressed him during the poetry recitations, offering verses that showed both intelligence and subtle wit. As the banquet wound down, General Chen found himself torn between fascination and confusion. Both daughters of Lord Zhao were remarkable, but in completely different ways. Tell me, General, King Kangxi said, appearing suddenly at his side with a knowing smile, what do you think of our court beauties? The general bowed carefully. Your Majesty's court is filled with many remarkable ladies. The king chuckled. Diplomatic answer. But I noticed you spent considerable time with the Zhao sisters tonight. Both are of marriageable age, you know. General Chen felt a trap closing around him, though he wasn't sure who had said it. They are both extraordinary women, Your Majesty. Indeed they are, the king agreed, his eyes twinkling with mischief. And I suspect this is only the beginning of a most entertaining courtship. As the evening ended and the guests began to depart, Both sisters believed they had made the stronger impression, but neither could have guessed that their real competition had only just begun. 3 weeks had passed since the banquet, and the Crimson Lotus Palace had become a battlefield disguised as a garden of tranquility. Ying Luo sat in her private study, composing what appeared to be a simple letter but was actually her latest strategic move. "Dearest General Chen," she wrote in her perfect calligraphy, "I hope this finds you well. I came across a rare manuscript on ancient siege tactics and thought you might find it intriguing." She paused, considering her words carefully. Each letter she had sent over the past weeks had been designed to showcase her intelligence while maintaining proper modesty. The general had responded favorably to each one, their correspondence growing more frequent and intimate. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called. Her personal maid, and Ping, slipped inside with urgent news. "My lady, I must tell you what I have learned from the kitchen servants." Ying Luo set down her brush. And Ping had been invaluable in gathering intelligence about her sister's activities. "Speak." "Lady Yunxi has been sending the general special delicacies from the kitchen," and Ping whispered. "Yesterday it was mooncakes shaped like lotus blossoms. Today she's preparing his favorite soup. She bribed the general's personal servant to learn what he prefers." Ying Luo's composure never wavered, but inside she felt a familiar spike of irritation. Trust Yunxi to take such a direct approach. "I see. And how has he responded?" "The servant says the general always sends gracious thanks, my lady. He seems pleased by the attention." "Of course he does," Ying Luo murmured. She rose and walked to her window, where she could see Yunxi in the garden below, arranging flowers with unusual care. "What else?" "Lady Yunxi has been asking the stable masters about the general's riding habits. I think she plans to arrange an accidental encounter during his morning rides." Ying Luo smiled coldly. "How transparent." "Very well, and Ping, I have a task for you." Meanwhile, in the garden below, Yunxi was indeed planning her next move. She had learned that General Chen rode through the palace gardens each morning before attending court, and she intended to be there tomorrow. Purely by coincidence, of course. "These chrysanthemums are perfect," she told her own maid, Ronglon. "White for purity, yellow for loyalty. When I'm carrying these tomorrow morning, they'll create exactly the right impression." "My lady is very clever," Ronglon agreed. "But what if Lady Ying Luo suspects?" Yunxi's eyes flashed. "Let her suspect. I'm not afraid of my sister's schemes." But she should have been more careful. That very evening, as she dined with her family, disaster struck in the form of a seemingly innocent question. "Yunxi," her father said suddenly, "Lady Chen mentioned seeing you near the stables today. She seemed surprised by your sudden interest in horsemanship." Yunxi's chopsticks paused halfway to her mouth. Lady Chen was one of the court's most notorious gossips, and one of Ying Luo's closest allies. "I was simply admiring the horses, father." "Surely there's no harm in that." "Of course not," Lord Zhao replied mildly. "Though I trust my daughter remembers that proper ladies don't chase after men like hunting dogs after prey." The rebuke stung all the more for being delivered so calmly. Across the table, Ying Luo ate her rice with perfect composure, but Yunxi caught the tiny smile playing at the corners of her sister's mouth. "Sister," Yunxi said sweetly, "you seem pleased with yourself tonight." "Do I?" Ying Luo replied innocently. "I suppose I'm simply happy that our family maintains such an excellent reputation at court." The challenge was subtle but unmistakable. Yunxi set down her chopsticks with careful precision. "Indeed. Though I sometimes wonder if reputation built on whispers and manipulation is truly worth maintaining." Their father's eyes sharpened. "Yunxi." "Forgive me, father," she said quickly. "I misspoke." But the damage was done. The war between the sisters had escalated from private competition to public tension, and everyone at court was beginning to notice. The next morning, Yunxi's plans for an accidental encounter were ruined when she discovered that General Chen's usual riding route had been blocked by sudden repairs to the garden path. Instead, she found herself walking aimlessly among the flowers while her sister entertained the general with tea in the pavilion of reflected moons. "The morning light suits you beautifully, Lady Ying Luo," General Chen said, accepting a cup of perfectly brewed jasmine tea. "You flatter me, General," she replied with gracious modesty. "But surely a warrior like yourself prefers the excitement of battlefields to quiet conversations with court ladies." "On the contrary," he said, his eyes meeting hers over the rim of his cup, "I find intelligent conversation far more stimulating than most battles." From her position among the distant chrysanthemums, Yunxi watched the intimate scene with growing fury. Her sister had outmaneuvered her completely, and now Ying Luo was reaping the rewards of that victory. That afternoon, the king himself added fuel to the fire. "General Chen," King Kangxi said during the daily court session, "I hear you've become quite popular with our court ladies." The general bowed carefully. "Your Majesty is too kind. Particularly with the Zhao sisters, I'm told," the king continued, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Both lovely girls, though quite different in temperament." Murmurs rippled through the assembled courtiers. Everyone knew that when the king took interest in a romantic matter, it usually meant he intended to be entertained by the resulting drama. "Tell me, General," the king said with mock seriousness, "how does a man choose between two such different forms of beauty? The elegant swan or the passionate phoenix?" General Chen felt the weight of every gaze in the throne room. This was clearly a test, though he wasn't sure of what. "Your Majesty, I am but a humble soldier. I hardly dare presume to court such distinguished ladies." "Nonsense," the king laughed. "A hero of your stature deserves the finest wife in the realm. Take your time, General. Choose carefully. We shall all watch with great interest to see which sister proves more compelling." The pavilion of whispering winds had never seemed more beautiful than it did on this crisp autumn evening. General Chen had arranged to meet Ying Luo here after 3 weeks of increasingly intimate correspondence and carefully chaperoned encounters. Ying Luo arrived precisely on time, her robes the color of midnight silk, her hair adorned with pearls that caught the moonlight. She had spent hours preparing for this moment, knowing instinctively that tonight would be decisive in their courtship. "General," she greeted him with a graceful bow. "Lady Ying Luo," he replied, rising from where he had been gazing out at the lotus pond. "Thank you for coming." They sat on opposite sides of a small table where he had arranged tea and delicate sweets. The setting was intimate but proper, with her maid waiting at a discreet distance. "Your letters have brought me great joy these past weeks," General Chen said, his voice warm with apparent sincerity. "As have yours," Ying Luo replied, allowing a hint of genuine emotion to color her usually controlled tone. Despite all her strategic planning, she had found herself genuinely drawn to this man's intelligence and apparent character. "I must confess something to you," the general continued, leaning slightly forward. "Since coming to court, I have been overwhelmed by attention from many families seeking advantageous marriages." Ying Luo nodded understandingly. "The burden of success, General." "But you," he said, his eyes meeting hers directly, "you alone have spoken to me as if I were more than just a stepping stone to power. You've shared thoughts about literature, philosophy, strategy, as if you were interested in my mind rather than merely my position." Heat rose in Ying Luo's cheeks, and for once her careful composure cracked slightly. "I would be lying if I said your position meant nothing to me, General." But I would also be lying if I claimed that was all I saw in you. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to cross. For a moment, Ying Luo forgot about competition with her sister, forgot about strategic advantage. She saw only a man who seemed to appreciate her for her true self. Ying Luo, he said softly, using her given name for the first time, there is something important I must tell you. Something about my true purpose here at court. Before he could continue, the sound of rapid footsteps interrupted them. Both turned to see a figure running toward the pavilion. General Chen's personal aide, his face flushed with urgency. General, the young man called out, then stopped abruptly when he saw they were not alone. Forgive me, I didn't realize you were entertaining. What is it, Zhenyu? The general asked sharply. The aide glanced nervously at Ying Luo, then leaned close to whisper in his master's ear. Whatever he said made the general's face go pale. Are you certain? General Chen demanded. Yes, sir. The message just arrived by swift courier. Master Lu says the situation is urgent. They've discovered our communications may have been intercepted. Ying Luo watched this exchange with growing alarm. The words meant nothing to her, but the general's reaction suggested serious trouble. General, she said carefully, if there is some crisis requiring your attention. No, he said quickly, but his easy confidence had vanished. That is, it's merely a minor military matter. Nothing that should concern you. But Ying Luo had not survived court politics this long by ignoring suspicious behavior. Something was very wrong here. Perhaps we should continue our conversation another evening, she suggested, rising gracefully. Yes, he agreed too quickly. Yes, that would be best. As she walked back toward the palace with her maid, Ying Luo's mind raced. The aide had mentioned intercepted communications and someone called Master Lu. Neither name nor situation sounded like routine military business. And Ping, she said quietly to her maid, I want you to find out everything you can about the general's aide, Zhenyu, he was called. Who he associates with, where he goes when not attending the general. Yes, my lady. Should I also inquire about this Master Lu? Carefully, Ying Luo warned. Very carefully. Meanwhile, across the palace gardens, Yunxi was experiencing her own moment of doubt. She had spent the evening with several other young ladies, all of whom had peppered her with questions about the general. Tell us, Yunxi, Lady Wang's daughter had said with barely concealed envy, is it true that General Chen writes you poetry? He writes beautifully, Yunxi had replied, though in truth his letters were more practical than poetic, unlike the flowery verses Ying Luo claimed to receive. And does he truly prefer you to your sister? Another girl asked. That question had stung because Yunxi wasn't sure of the answer. Oh, the general was always kind to her, always pleased by her gifts and attention. But there was something in his manner, a distance she couldn't quite bridge, as if part of his mind was always elsewhere. My sister and I are very different, she had said diplomatically. The general must choose what type of woman suits him best. But now, walking alone in her chambers, Yunxi wondered if she truly knew what type of man the general was. For all her bold declarations about love-conquering strategy, she realized she knew very little about Chen Wei Long beyond his public reputation. 3 days later, Ping returned to Ying Luo with information that changed everything. My lady, the maid whispered urgently, you must hear what I've discovered. They were alone in Ying Luo's study, with the door firmly closed and guards posted to ensure privacy. The general's aide, Zhenyu, he's not what he appears to be, Ping began. He's been meeting secretly with known rebels, including a man called Master Lu who leads a group calling itself the Iron Phoenix Society. Ying Luo felt the blood drain from her face. You're certain of this? I followed him myself, my lady. They meet in an abandoned temple outside the city. And my lady. And Ping hesitated. Tell me everything. I overheard part of their conversation. The general, he's not loyal to the king. He's been feeding information to the rebels about palace defenses, court politics, the movements of loyal troops. The room seemed to spin around Ying Luo. The man she had been falling in love with, the man she had seen as her perfect match, was a traitor to everything she held dear. There's more, and Ping continued. They spoke of your family specifically. How the general's courtship of you and Lady Yunxi was part of a plan to gain influence with Lord Zhao, to learn state secrets through pillow talk. Ying Luo closed her eyes, feeling the full weight of betrayal crash over her. Every intimate conversation, every moment of connection she had felt, all of it had been calculated manipulation. What do you wish me to do with this information, my lady? Ying Luo was quiet for a long moment, her mind racing through possibilities. She could expose the general immediately, earn her father's gratitude and the king's favor. But that would also mean admitting how thoroughly she had been deceived. Or, say nothing to anyone, she finally decided. Not yet. My lady, I need to think. And first, I need to speak with my sister. For the first time in months, Ying Luo realized that Yunxi might not be her enemy after all. They had both been played by a master manipulator, and now they both faced the same choice: destroy the man who had deceived them, or risk being destroyed themselves. Yunxi was practicing her embroidery in the garden of silent contemplation when her sister approached. The unusual sight of Ying Luo seeking her out made Yunxi set down her needle with curiosity. Sister, Ying Luo said, her voice carefully controlled, we need to talk. Privately, there was something different about Ying Luo's manner, a crack in her usual perfect composure that made Yunxi immediately alert. Of course. Ronglon, please leave us. After the maid departed, Ying Luo sat beside her sister on the stone bench. For a moment, she struggled to find words. What is it? Yunxi asked, genuine concern replacing her usual competitiveness. You look as if you've seen a ghost. In a way, I have, Ying Luo replied grimly. Yunxi, what I'm about to tell you must never leave this garden. Do I have your word? You're frightening me, Yunxi said. But yes, you have my word. Ying Luo took a deep breath and told her sister everything, and Ping's discoveries, the secret meetings, the general's true allegiance, and his calculated deception of them both. As the tale unfolded, Yunxi's face went through a series of emotions: disbelief, shock, hurt, and finally, blazing anger. That bastard, she whispered when Ying Luo finished. That lying, scheming bastard. All this time, while I was falling in love with him, he was planning to use me as a spy against our own family. You were falling in love with him? Ying Luo asked quietly. Yunxi laughed bitterly. Weren't you? Ying Luo nodded reluctantly. I thought he was different. I thought he saw past my careful politics to who I really was. He probably did, Yunxi said with harsh insight. That's what makes him so dangerous. He's skilled enough to make us both believe our own lies about why we wanted him. They sat in silence for a moment, both processing the full scope of their betrayal. What do we do now? Yunxi asked finally. That's what I need to discuss with you, Ying Luo said. We have several choices. We could expose him immediately, go to father, or even directly to the king. But that would mean admitting we were both completely fooled, Yunxi pointed out. Our reputations would be ruined. People would say we were naive little girls who couldn't see through an obvious deception. Exactly. And there's another problem. We have no proof except the word of a servant. Master Lu and his rebels are careful. By the time we convince anyone to investigate, they could disappear completely. Yunxi's eyes narrowed. You have another plan. I do, Ying Luo admitted. But it's dangerous and I can't do it alone. I need your help. Tell me. Ying Luo turned to face her sister directly. We make him think his plan is working. We continue the courtship, but now we're the ones gathering information. We learn the full scope of the rebellion, who else is involved, when they plan to strike. Then we expose not just General Chen, but the entire conspiracy. Yunxi stared at her sister in amazement. You want to become spies ourselves? I want to turn the tables on the man who tried to make fools of us both, Ying Luo said fiercely. But it means continuing to pretend affection for him. It means letting him think he's still manipulating us while we manipulate him. It's brilliant, Yunxi breathed. And completely insane. If we're caught, we'll be executed as traitors, Ying Luo finished bluntly. But if we do nothing and his rebellion succeeds, we'll probably be killed anyway for being part of a loyalist family. Yunxi considered this for several minutes, weighing the risks and possibilities. Finally, she smiled. But it wasn't her usual bright expression. This smile was sharp as a blade. Sister, she said, I think this is the first time we've ever truly agreed on anything. What do you need me to do? They spent the next hour planning their strategy. Ying Luo would continue her intellectual courtship, using their discussions to probe for information about rebel plans. Yunxi would play to his emotions, encouraging him to share confidences with the woman he believed was falling helplessly in love with him. There's one more thing, Ying Luo said as they prepared to part. We need to make our rivalry convincing. If the general suspects were working together, everything falls apart. So we continue fighting? Yunxi asked. In public, yes. We give him exactly what he expects. Two sisters so blinded by jealousy that we can't see we're being used. Yunxi grinned, and this time the expression was genuine. You know, sister, I think I'm going to enjoy this. That evening, they put their plan into action. At the customary evening banquet, both sisters appeared to compete for the general's attention with renewed intensity. General Chen, Ying Luo said loudly enough to be overheard, I've been reading about the military campaigns of the Tang dynasty. I would love to hear your thoughts on their strategies. How tedious, Yunxi interrupted with apparent disdain. General, surely you'd prefer to discuss something more pleasant? I've composed a poem about your victory at Iron Creek. Their public spat was so convincing that several courtiers exchanged meaningful glances. The Zhao sisters were clearly becoming more desperate in their competition, exactly as everyone expected. But General Chen, watching the performance, felt a small chill of unease he couldn't quite explain. Something about the sisters seemed different tonight, though he couldn't put his finger on what had changed. Ladies, he said diplomatically, I would be honored to discuss both military history and poetry with you. Perhaps at separate times when we can give each subject proper attention? Of course, Ying Luo agreed graciously, though she shot her sister a look of apparent irritation. How generous of you to spare time for both of us, Yunxi replied with false sweetness. As the evening progressed, both sisters played their roles perfectly. But beneath the surface of their rivalry, they were united for the first time in their lives by a common purpose, destroying the man who had dared to think he could deceive the daughters of Zhao Wei Ming. The game had changed completely, and General Chen Wei Long had no idea that his prey had become the hunters. 3 nights later, Ying Luo sat in the pavilion of Whispering Winds once again, but this time she was fully prepared for the conversation ahead. Thank you for meeting me again, General Chen said as he poured tea with practiced charm. I apologize for the interruption the other evening. Think nothing of it, Ying Luo replied smoothly. I understand that military duties often come unexpectedly. You're very understanding, he said, studying her face. Most court ladies would be offended by such treatment. I'm not most court ladies, she replied, allowing a hint of flirtation to enter her voice. A man in your position must have many complex responsibilities. The general paused, his tea cup halfway to his lips. Was she fishing for information, or simply making conversation? Complex indeed, he agreed carefully. Sometimes I wonder if court life is more dangerous than the battlefield. Oh. Ying Luo leaned forward with apparent interest. How so? On a battlefield, you know who your enemies are, he said, watching her reaction closely. At court, allies and enemies often wear the same face. It was a test, Ying Luo realized. He was probing to see how she would respond to hints about deception and divided loyalties. How wise you are, she said with admiration. I suppose that's why the king values your counsel so highly. You must see threats that others miss. The king is very trusting, General Chen said carefully. Sometimes I think too trusting. Another test. He was gauging her loyalty to the throne. Surely his trust in you is well placed? Ying Luo asked innocently. Of course, he replied, but she caught the slight hesitation. Though I sometimes wonder if he truly understands the challenges facing the realm. What sort of challenges? The people grow restless, he said, apparently warming to the subject. They say the taxes are too heavy, that the king is too focused on palace luxuries while common folk struggle. Do you think there's truth to such complaints? Ying Luo asked, playing the role of the naive court lady seeking education from a worldly man. Perhaps, he admitted. Change is sometimes necessary, even if it's difficult. There it was, the opening she'd been waiting for. He was testing whether she might be sympathetic to rebellion. Change can be frightening, she said thoughtfully. But I suppose a strong leader could guide people through such transitions? His eyes sharpened with interest. You believe the realm needs stronger leadership? I believe, Ying Luo said carefully, that the right leader could unite people behind a vision of prosperity and justice. Someone with the courage to make hard choices. Someone like whom, he pressed. Ying Luo smiled modestly. I'm just a court lady, General. I wouldn't presume to understand such complex matters. But surely someone with your military brilliance and understanding of the people's needs. She let the compliment hang in the air, watching as he processed the implications. She was hinting at support for his potential leadership, exactly what a rebel would want to hear from a powerful lord's daughter. You flatter me, he said, but she could see the calculation behind his modest words. Though I admit, I sometimes think about what could be accomplished with the right support. What kind of support? Ying Luo asked, her heart racing. He was taking the bait. Influential families who understand that the realm's future might require new directions, he said carefully. Families with access to information, resources, connections. Families like mine, she asked softly. His smile was warm and seemingly genuine. Your family's loyalty to the throne is well known, Ying Luo. I would never suggest anything that might compromise that loyalty. But his eyes told a different story. He was already imagining how he could use her family's position for his rebellion. Of course not, she agreed demurely. Though I confess, our conversations make me see the world differently. You have such insight into the realm's challenges. Perhaps we could discuss these matters further sometime, he suggested, in a more private setting. Ying Luo felt a chill of disgust but maintained her facade. I would be honored, General. Your guidance means a great deal to me. Meanwhile, Yunxi was conducting her own campaign of false affection. 2 evenings later, she arranged to encounter the general during his morning ride, carrying fresh flowers as if she'd been gathering them for pure pleasure. General Chen, she called out with apparent delight. What a wonderful surprise. He reined in his horse, smiling down at her with practiced charm. Lady Yunxi, you're up early this morning. I couldn't sleep, she confessed, allowing vulnerability to color her voice. I kept thinking about our conversation yesterday. The previous day, she had sought him out to discuss poetry, but had gradually steered the conversation toward more personal topics, her hopes, her fears, her growing feelings for him. You seemed troubled, he agreed, dismounting to walk beside her. What weighs on your mind? Yunxi bit her lip as if struggling with internal conflict. It's foolish of me to burden you with my worries. Nothing you say could be foolish, he assured her gallantly. It's just, sometimes I feel so constrained by court expectations, she said with apparent honesty. Everyone has such fixed ideas about how a lady should behave, what she should want. But what if what I want is different? This was her strategy, to present herself as a free spirit trapped by convention, someone who might be willing to break rules for love. What do you want? He asked, his voice dropping to an intimate tone. Freedom, she whispered, stopping to face him directly. The freedom to choose my own path, to be with the person I... She trailed off, pretending to be overcome with emotion. Yunxi, he said softly, stepping closer. You're not as alone as you think. What do you mean? There are others who believe in freedom, he said carefully. Others who think the old ways of doing things might not serve us well forever. Another test. He was gauging whether she might be receptive to revolutionary ideas. Do you really think change is possible? She asked with breathless hope. With the right people supporting it, he said, his hand brushing against hers. People brave enough to risk everything for what they believe in. I think, Yunxi said, meeting his eyes directly, that I could be very brave for the right cause. Or the right person. The double meaning was clear, and she saw his satisfaction at her apparent conversion to his way of thinking. That night, the sisters met in secret to compare their intelligence. He's definitely recruiting us, Ying Luo reported grimly. He's testing our loyalty to the king and our willingness to support change, meaning rebellion. He told me there are others who believe in freedom, Yunxi added. I think he's planning to introduce me to other conspirators soon. Perfect, Ying Luo said. We need names, locations, timing. The more information we can gather. Sister, Yunxi interrupted quietly. What if we can't go through with this? What if, when the time comes to destroy him, we what? Ying Luo asked sharply. What if part of us still cares for him? Yunxi whispered. Even knowing what he is, I sometimes catch myself forgetting it's all pretense. His charm, his attention, it's intoxicating. Ying Luo was quiet for a moment. I know, she admitted. He's skilled at making us feel special, chosen. But we must remember, every kindness he shows us is calculated. Every moment of apparent affection is designed to manipulate us into betraying our family and our realm. You're right, Yunxi said, her resolve hardening. He made his choice when he decided to use us. Now we'll show him the consequences of underestimating the daughters of Zhao Wei Ming. A week later, their patience was rewarded. General Chen invited Ying Luo to a private dinner in his quarters, claiming he had something important to discuss. You've seemed different lately, he said as servants placed dishes between them. More open to new ideas. Your influence, General, Ying Luo replied with a smile. You've helped me see beyond the narrow confines of court life. I'm glad, he said warmly. Because I want to share something with you. Something that could change both our futures. Here it comes, Ying Luo thought. I'm listening. The realm is sick, Ying Luo, he said with apparent passion. The king is weak, the court is corrupt, and the people suffer while nobles feast. But there are those of us who believe change is possible. What kind of change? A new order, he said, leaning forward intently. Led by someone who truly understands both military strategy and the people's needs. Someone who could bring justice and prosperity to all levels of society. Someone like you? She asked breathlessly. I'm just a soldier, he said with false modesty. But I know others who share this vision. learned men, capable leaders, people with the resources to make real change happen. Who are they? Ying Luo asked, her pulse racing. That's what I want to discuss, he said, taking her hand across the table. Ying Luo, I've grown to care for you deeply. More than that, I've come to trust you. I believe you could be part of something greater than either of us alone. What are you asking of me? Join us, he said simply. Use your family's position to help create a better realm. Your father has access to military reports, troop movements, intelligence about the king's plans. Information that could save countless lives if shared with the right people. There it was, the explicit request for treason. Ying Luo felt a mixture of triumph and revulsion. You're asking me to spy on my own family? She whispered, as if the idea both shocked and intrigued her. I'm asking you to help prevent a civil war, he corrected smoothly. The change is coming whether we guide it or not. By helping us, you ensure it happens with minimal bloodshed. And if I refuse? His grip on her hand tightened slightly. I would be disappointed. And my associates might question whether the Zhao family can truly be trusted to adapt to changing times. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Join us or be eliminated. I need time to think, Ying Luo said carefully. Of course, he agreed, releasing her hand. But don't take too long. History waits for no one, and neither do revolutions. The next morning, both sisters met with their father in his private study. It was time to reveal everything. Father, Ying Luo began formally, we have information of the utmost importance to the security of the realm. Lord Zhao looked up from his correspondence with sharp attention. Speak. They told him everything, the general's deception, their own investigation, and the explicit recruitment attempt. Their father listened in growing amazement and fury. You're certain of these accusations? He demanded when they finished. Completely certain, Ying Luo replied. I can provide details of our conversations, and Yunxi has observed meetings between his aide and known dissidents. We've been playing a dangerous game, Father, Yunxi added. But we felt we needed proof before making such serious accusations. Lord Zhao studied his daughters with new respect. You've shown remarkable courage and intelligence, he said finally. And you've given the realm a great service. But now we must decide how to proceed. What do you recommend? Ying Luo asked. We take this directly to the king, their father decided. But carefully, if General Chen suspects exposure, he and his conspirators could disappear or accelerate their plans. There's a banquet tomorrow night, Yunxi pointed out. All the major conspirators will likely be present. If we could expose them publicly. Too risky, Lord Zhao said. If we're wrong about any of them, or if they have supporters we don't know about, it could turn into a bloodbath. Then what do we do? Ying Luo asked. Their father smiled grimly. We give General Chen exactly what he wants, and use it to destroy him completely. The plan they devised was elegant in its simplicity. Ying Luo would agree to provide information, but the intelligence would be carefully crafted by Lord Zhao to serve their purposes. Meanwhile, they would secretly gather evidence of every rebel contact, every treasonous conversation, every detail of the conspiracy. When we strike, Lord Zhao explained, we'll have enough proof to destroy not just General Chen, but his entire network. How long do we have? Yunxi asked. Not long, her father replied grimly. Revolutionary fervor has its own momentum. They'll want to act before winter makes military campaigns impossible. That evening, Ying Luo sent word to General Chen that she had made her decision. They would meet the following night, and she would give him her answer. But unknown to the general, King Kangxi would be listening to every word. The final confrontation was set for the Pavilion of Whispering Winds. How fitting that the place where both sisters had been deceived would become the site of their revenge. As Ying Luo prepared for what might be the most dangerous performance of her life, she felt a cold satisfaction settling over her. General Chen Wei Long had underestimated them from the beginning, seeing only two naive girls competing for his attention. Tomorrow night, he would learn the true cost of that mistake. The Pavilion of Whispering Winds had been carefully prepared for this final meeting. Hidden in the shadows beyond the lantern light, King Kangxi waited with his most trusted guards, while Lord Zhao positioned himself where he could hear every word spoken. Ying Luo arrived first, her heart pounding despite her outward composure. She had rehearsed this conversation dozens of times, but she knew that one mistake could mean death, not just for her, but for her entire family. General Chen appeared precisely at the appointed time, his confident stride betraying no hint of suspicion. He was dressed in his finest robes, clearly expecting this to be a celebration of his victory. "My dear Ying Luo," he greeted her warmly, taking her hands in his. "You look radiant tonight." "Thank you, General," she replied, allowing her voice to tremble slightly with apparent emotion. "I hope you'll still think so after you hear what I've decided." "I have no doubt of it," he said confidently. "You're too intelligent not to see the wisdom in our cause." Ying Luo took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for a momentous confession. "You're right. I've thought about everything you said, and I want to help you." His smile blazed with triumph. "I knew you would understand. You're extraordinary, Ying Luo, beautiful, intelligent, and brave enough to help shape history." "What do you need me to do?" she asked, playing the part of the devoted convert. "For now, simply listen and learn," he replied, drawing her to sit beside him. "Tonight, I want to introduce you to some of my associates, men who share our vision for a better realm." "Associates?" Ying Luo's eyes widened with apparent nervousness. "How many people are involved in this?" "More than you might expect," General Chen said proudly. "We have supporters throughout the military, the bureaucracy, even among the noble families. The Iron Phoenix Society has grown far beyond what anyone imagines." From his hiding place, Lord Zhao carefully noted every word. Each name, each detail would be crucial evidence. "The Iron Phoenix Society?" Ying Luo repeated. "Our organization," he explained. "Named for the mythical bird that rises from ashes, as our realm will rise from the corruption of the current dynasty." "It's a beautiful symbol," Ying Luo said admiringly. "Who leads this society?" "Master Lu Tianming is our guiding spirit," General Chen replied. "A brilliant scholar who opened my eyes to the possibility of real change. You'll meet him soon. He's eager to welcome Lord Zhao's daughter into our ranks." "And what about the king?" Ying Luo asked, as if the question troubled her conscience. "What happens to him when we succeed?" General Chen's expression hardened slightly. "The king has had his chance to serve the people. He chose personal luxury over their welfare. History will judge him accordingly." "You mean he'll be killed?" she whispered. "Revolution requires difficult choices," he said firmly. "But his death will spare thousands of others. Surely one life is worth preventing a prolonged civil war." In the shadows, King Kangxi's jaw tightened with fury, but he remained silent and still. "I understand," Ying Luo said quietly. "When do you plan to make these changes?" "Soon," General Chen replied. "Master Lu believes the time is perfect. The harvest has been poor, taxes are heavy, and the people grow restless. A strong leader who promised relief and justice could rally enormous support." "What role would I play?" Ying Luo asked. "Initially, we need intelligence," he explained. "Your father receives reports on troop movements, defensive preparations, the king's travel plans. That information could help us minimize casualties on both sides." "You want me to steal military secrets from my own father?" she asked, as if the reality was just sinking in. "I want you to help save the realm," he corrected smoothly. "Your father is an honorable man, but he's trapped by old loyalties. When our new government is established, men like him will be valued advisors if they demonstrate the wisdom to adapt." Another threat disguised as reassurance. Ying Luo nodded as if convinced by his logic. "There's something else," General Chen continued, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. After we succeed, I'll need a partner, someone who understands both the old ways and the new vision. Someone I can trust completely. What are you saying? Ying Luo breathed. I'm saying that my feelings for you are genuine, he declared, taking her face in his hands. Yes, I initially approached you for strategic reasons, but what I found was far more than I expected. You're everything I could want in a queen. Queen. The word hung in the air like a poisoned promise. You truly care for me? She asked, allowing hope and wonder to color her voice. More than I ever thought possible, he swore convincingly. Together, we could rule justly, create the realm our people deserve. For a moment, Ying Luo almost believed him. His performance was flawless, his apparent sincerity breathtaking. If she hadn't known the truth, she might have been completely taken in. I need to know something, she said softly. What about my sister? His expression flickered, just for an instant, with something that might have been annoyance or calculation. Yunxi is spirited, he said carefully. I've enjoyed her company, but she lacks your depth, your strategic understanding. She could never be more than a pleasant diversion. The casual dismissal of her sister's worth ignited fury in Ying Luo's chest, but she kept her expression neutral. She believes you care for her, Ying Luo pointed out. Young women often mistake attention for affection, he replied with stunning callousness. When the time comes, she'll understand that some dreams must yield to greater purposes. And if she doesn't understand? General Chen's smile turned cold. Then she'll learn that the new realm has no place for those who can't accept reality. It was all the confession they needed. From the shadows came the sound of steel being drawn as the king's guards moved into position. General Chen spun around, his face draining of color as he saw King Kangxi step into the lantern light. Your Majesty, he gasped, dropping to his knees in reflexive submission. General Chen Wei Long, the king said, his voice carrying the chill of winter. Or should I call you by your true title, traitor? Your Majesty, I can explain. Silence, the king commanded. You have already explained quite thoroughly. We heard every word of your confession. Lord Zhao emerged from his own hiding place, his expression thunderous. Did you truly believe, he asked the kneeling general, that you could manipulate my daughters without consequence? General Chen's eyes darted between the king, Lord Zhao, and Ying Luo, finally understanding the trap that had been laid for him. You, he whispered to Ying Luo. This was all an act. Ying Luo finished coldly. Yes, every word, every gesture, every moment of apparent affection was as calculated as your own performance. The difference is that my deception served justice, while yours served only your own ambition. At that moment, Yunxi stepped out of the shadows where she too had been listening. Hello, Wei Long, she said sweetly. Surprised to see me? I'm hurt that you dismissed me as merely a pleasant diversion. I thought our poetry sessions meant more to you than that. His face went pale as he realized both sisters had been working against him from the beginning. The Iron Phoenix Society, Master Lu Tianming, your planned assassination of His Majesty, King Kangxi listed grimly. We know everything, General. Your rebellion dies tonight. Your Majesty, General Chen said desperately, I was loyal. Everything I did was to strengthen the realm. By murdering your king and destroying the dynasty? Kangxi's voice rose with rage. By manipulating innocent young women and threatening their families? That is your idea of loyalty. Guards stepped forward to seize the fallen general, but King Kangxi held up a hand. Before you face your fate, the king said, I want you to understand something. These young women, whom you saw as naive targets for manipulation, they outthought you, outmaneuvered you, and delivered you to justice. Your downfall comes not from my guards or my spies, but from your own arrogance in underestimating the daughters of Lord Zhao. General Chen looked at both sisters with something like grudging respect mixed with hatred. Remarkable, he admitted bitterly. I truly didn't see it coming. That, Ying Luo said with icy satisfaction, was the point. As the guards led General Chen Wei to await execution, King Kangxi turned to the sisters with genuine admiration. Lady Ying Luo, Lady Yunxi, he said formally, the realm owes you a debt that cannot be repaid. Your courage and intelligence have saved countless lives. We only did our duty, Your Majesty, Ying Luo replied with a proper bow. And had quite a lot of fun doing it, Yunxi added with a grin that made the king chuckle despite the gravity of the situation. Tell me, King Kangxi said curiously, when did you realize he was deceiving you? I suspected something was wrong after his aide's interruption that first evening, Ying Luo admitted. But I didn't know the truth until my maid discovered his meetings with known rebels. And I knew something was off about his letters, Yunxi added. They were too careful, too calculated. A man truly in love writes more foolishly than that. The king laughed. Wise beyond your years, both of you. Now, what reward can I offer for such service? Your Majesty's continued health and reign is reward enough, Lord Zhao said diplomatically. Nonsense, the king replied. I insist on showing proper gratitude. Name what you desire. The sisters exchanged glances, and Yunxi spoke for both of them. Your Majesty, she said with unusual seriousness, we ask only that you remember this lesson, that women can be just as capable of serving the realm as men, given the opportunity. And Ying Luo added, that perhaps someday, marriages at court might be based more on genuine compatibility than political advantage. King Kangxi studied them both thoughtfully. Granted, he said finally. I hereby decree that both daughters of Lord Zhao may choose their own husbands, subject only to their father's blessing and my approval, which I suspect will be easily obtained for any man worthy of such remarkable women. As they walked back toward the palace together, Yunxi nudged her sister playfully. So, she said with a grin, still think strategy is more important than passion? Ying Luo considered the question seriously. I think, she said finally, that the best strategies require both intelligence and passion. We needed your fire and my planning to succeed. Does this mean we're no longer rivals? Yunxi asked. Oh, we'll always be rivals, Ying Luo replied with a smile. But now we're rivals who trust each other. That makes us infinitely more dangerous to anyone who tries to use us. Poor General Chen, Yunxi said with mock sympathy. He never stood a chance against the combined forces of a strategic swan and a passionate phoenix. No, Ying Luo agreed with satisfaction. He really didn't. Behind them, Lord Zhao shook his head in amazement as he listened to his daughter's conversation. He had always known they were intelligent, but tonight they had proven themselves capable of palace intrigue that would impress the most seasoned courtiers. The realm was safe. The rebellion was crushed, and his daughters had emerged from their ordeal not just unharmed, but stronger than ever. As for General Chen Wei Long and his Iron Phoenix Society, they would indeed rise from ashes, but only as a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating the daughters of Zhao Wei Ming. The sisters who had once competed for the same man's attention had discovered something far more valuable than romance, the unbreakable bond of family united in purpose, and the satisfaction of justice served by their own hands. In years to come, when court historians told the story of the Iron Phoenix conspiracy, they would speak of the king's wisdom, Lord Zhao's loyalty, and the brilliant trap that saved the dynasty. But those who knew the truth would remember it differently, as the night two sisters proved that love, when properly applied, could indeed conquer all.